true paranormal police stories that will send shivers down your spine. These are the cases that kept seasoned officers awake at night, stories whispered in hushed tones in the bleak hallways of police stations. These are encounters with the unknown, where the line between reality and nightmare blurs. Let's dim the lights, turn up the volume, and step into a world where every shadow holds a secret, and every creak could be something far more sinister. Our first story takes us to a small town, a place where nothing out of the ordinary ever really happened, or so they thought. The police station, a sturdy brick building that had stood for over a century, was a beacon of security for the townspeople. But beneath the surface, a darkness was brewing, a presence that would soon make itself known. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly flickering lights, doors swinging open and shut on their own, disembodied whispers echoing through the empty corridors. At first, it was easy to dismiss these incidents as tricks of the mind, the product of overactive imaginations fueled by long nights and too much coffee. But as the occurrences grew bolder, more frequent, even the most skeptical officers began to doubt their own senses. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, heavy and deliberate, yet no one would be there. Objects moved inexplicably, files vanished from locked drawers, only to reappear in strange places. Then there were the whispers, soft at first, barely audible, like the rustling of leaves just beyond the edge of hearing. They seemed to emanate from the shadows, swirling around the officers' feet, sending chills down their spines. As the weeks turned into months, the activity intensified. Cold spots plagued certain areas of the station, the air thick with an oppressive, almost tangible dread. The officers, hardened by years of dealing with the worst humanity had to offer, found themselves on edge, their nerves frayed. One officer, a seasoned veteran with a reputation for his unwavering composure, reported seeing a shadowy figure lurking in the interrogation room. It stood in the corner, shrouded in darkness, its eyes glowing with an eerie, otherworldly light. Another officer, a young rookie still wet behind the ears, claimed to have been physically shoved against a locker by an unseen force. The fear was palpable now, a living, breathing entity that permeated every inch of the once sacred halls of justice. The police chief, a pragmatic man who scoffed at the mere mention of the supernatural, found himself reluctantly calling in a paranormal investigator. The investigator, a woman with a calm demeanor and an air of quiet authority, spent several nights in the station documenting the strange phenomena. Her findings sent shockwaves through the department. The station, she concluded, was indeed haunted by the restless spirit of a former inmate who had died within its walls. Our next story takes place on a desolate stretch of highway, where the only sound is the wind whistling through the trees. Officer Mark Jenkins, a seasoned veteran with a no-nonsense demeanor, was patrolling his usual beat when he noticed a lone figure standing by the side of the road. It was a young woman, dressed in a white dress, her thumb extended in the universal sign of a hitchhiker. Now, Officer Jenkins was a man of habit, and he prided himself on his strict adherence to the law. But there was something about the woman's demeanor, a certain vulnerability in her stance, that compelled him to pull over. As he approached her, he noticed something peculiar. Her dress, though seemingly pristine, was damp, as if she had been caught in a sudden downpour. "Need a lift, ma'am?" Officer Jenkins asked, rolling down the window. The woman nodded silently, her eyes downcast. She got in, the scent of rain and something faintly floral filling the car. "Where are you headed?" he asked, trying to make conversation. The woman mumbled an address, her voice barely a whisper. Officer Jenkins recognized it as a house on the outskirts of town, a place with a dark history. He tried to engage her in conversation, asking her name, where she was coming from, but she remained eerily silent, her gaze fixed on something outside the window. As they approached the address she had given him, Officer Jenkins slowed down, glancing at his passenger. She was gone. He slammed on the brakes, heart pounding, and frantically searched the car. There was no sign of her. He checked the back seat, under the seats, even the trunk, but she had vanished without a trace. Shaken but determined to get to the bottom of things, Officer Jenkins approached the house, a sense of unease settling over him. He knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Just as he was about to leave, he noticed something. Lying on the porch was a single white rose, still wet with dew. He picked it up, a chill running down his spine. The scent was unmistakable, the same faint floral scent he had smelled in the car. Later that day, Officer Jenkins decided to look into the history of the address he had been given. What he found sent a chill down his spine. The house had once been the scene of a tragic accident. A young woman wearing a white dress had been struck and killed by a car on a stormy night. From that day forward, Officer Jenkins couldn't shake the feeling that he had encountered something truly unexplainable, a chilling reminder that some roads lead to destinations beyond our understanding. The piercing ring of a 911 call sliced through the quiet hum of the police station. It was a Friday night, and the dispatcher, a seasoned veteran named Sarah, could feel the weight of the impending weekend settling in. But this call was different. The voice on the other end of the line was frantic, desperate, but the words were garbled, unintelligible. Sarah strained to make sense of the panicked cries, her pulse quickening with each passing second. "Hello? Can you hear me? What is your emergency?" she asked, her voice calm and steady, despite the knot of worry tightening in her chest. The only response was a series of ear-splitting shrieks and muffled sobs. Sarah tried every trick in the book, but the caller remained frustratingly incoherent. Just when she was about to give up hope, a chillingly clear phrase cut through the static. "Help! Blood! Basement." The line went dead. Sarah immediately traced the call to a dilapidated Victorian house on the edge of town, a place with a sinister reputation that had sent chills down her spine since she was a child. 2 officers, Johnson and Ramirez, were dispatched to the scene. As they approached the house, a palpable sense of dread washed over them. The once grand home now stood as a decaying testament to forgotten glory, its paint peeling, windows boarded up, and an air of oppressive silence hanging over it. The officers exchanged a wary glance before cautiously approaching the front door. The porch creaked ominously under their weight, as if warning them to turn back. Johnson knocked, his knuckles rapping against the rotting wood. Silence. He tried the doorknob. It turned with a groan, revealing a darkened hallway that seemed to swallow the light. The air inside was thick with the smell of mildew and something faintly metallic, sending a shiver down their spines. "Hello? Police!" Johnson called out, his voice echoing through the empty house. Only silence answered. With guns drawn, they moved cautiously through the house, their flashlights cutting through the gloom, illuminating dust-covered furniture and cobweb-draped portraits that seemed to watch their every move. As they descended the creaking basement stairs, a sense of unease washed over them, amplified by the musty air and the oppressive darkness. The hair on the back of their necks stood on end, and then they saw it. In the far corner of the basement, scrawled on the damp concrete floor in what appeared to be dried blood, was a single chilling message: "Help me!" But there was no one there. The house stood empty, its secrets locked away in the silence. The 911 call remained a mystery, a phantom cry for help that echoed in the minds of everyone who heard it, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved. The call came in as a domestic disturbance, a routine call on a Tuesday night. Officers Davis and Thompson, partners for the last 3 years, responded, expecting nothing out of the ordinary. They had seen it all, or so they thought. As they pulled up to the nondescript suburban home, they could hear shouting coming from inside. A man's voice, laced with rage, echoed into the night. They approached the house cautiously, their hands hovering near their holsters, a silent acknowledgement of the potential danger that lurked behind closed doors. Officer Davis knocked firmly on the door, and the shouting abruptly ceased. A moment of tense silence followed before the door swung open, revealing a disheveled man with wild eyes and a manic grin plastered across his face. He was sweating profusely, his chest heaving, but it was his eyes that truly unsettled the officers. They were vacant, devoid of any recognizable emotion, as if something else was looking out from behind them. "Evening, officers," the man drawled, his voice strangely calm, at odds with his disheveled appearance. "What brings you to our humble abode?" Before either officer could respond, the man lunged at Officer Davis, his hands outstretched, his fingers contorting at unnatural angles. The attack was so sudden, so unexpected, that it caught both officers off guard. Officer Thompson reacted instinctively, tackling the man to the ground, a surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins. But as he struggled to restrain the man, he felt an unnatural strength, a power that belied his wiry frame. "He's strong!" Officer Thompson grunted, straining to hold the man down. Officer Davis, recovering from the initial shock, moved to assist his partner. As he did, he caught a glimpse of the man's face contorted in a grotesque mockery of a smile, his eyes glowing with an eerie, almost inhuman light. The struggle continued, the man writhing and thrashing with impossible force, his voice a guttural growl that seemed to emanate from the depths of his being. It was as if some unseen entity had taken control, twisting his body and mind into a weapon. Just when they thought they had him subdued, the man went limp, his body collapsing in on itself like a puppet with its strings cut. The manic grin vanished, replaced by a look of blank confusion. He looked up at the officers, his eyes clearing for the briefest of moments, a flicker of recognition returning to his gaze. What happened?" he stammered, his voice weak and trembling. The officers, shaken but unharmed, exchanged a look, a silent acknowledgement of the chilling encounter they had just experienced. They had faced down criminals, dealt with the dregs of society, but nothing could have prepared them for the raw, primal terror that emanated from that man. A terror that spoke of something ancient, something evil. The case landed on Detective Miller's desk like a bad dream. A missing person case with no leads, no witnesses, and a growing sense of unease that gnawed at the edges of even his most rational thoughts. Sarah Williams, a 25-year-old librarian, had vanished from her apartment, leaving behind no sign of a struggle, no indication of where she might have gone. Her disappearance defied logic, leaving a void that whispered of something sinister. Detective Miller, a man who prided himself on his methodical approach and his ability to separate fact from fiction, found himself drawn into the enigma of Sarah's disappearance. He meticulously examined the scene, his eyes scanning every inch of her small apartment. Everything seemed ordinary, mundane even. There were no signs of forced entry, no indications of a struggle. It was as if she had simply stepped out of her life and into thin air. The only anomaly was a single playing card, the Queen of Spades, found face down on her otherwise neatly made bed. As Detective Miller delved deeper into Sarah's life, interviewing friends, family and colleagues, he uncovered a pattern of strange occurrences in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. Friends described Sarah as acting strangely withdrawn, haunted by nightmares that left her waking in a cold sweat, her eyes wide with terror. She spoke of a feeling of being watched, of a presence that lingered at the edge of her vision, a shadow that seemed to stretch and twist in the corners of her mind. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the case grew colder, the trail running dry. Just when hope began to dwindle, a cryptic message appeared on Sarah's social media account, a message that sent chills down the spines of everyone who read it. It was a single sentence posted from an unknown device at an hour when Sarah would have been asleep. "The game is afoot. Find me before the clock strikes 13. Detective Miller, his gut instinct screaming that something was terribly wrong, pored over Sarah's online activity, searching for any clue that could lead him to her. He discovered a series of cryptic messages exchanged on an online forum dedicated to the paranormal, a hidden world of shadows and whispers where Sarah had been an active participant. The messages, filled with eerie symbols and coded language, spoke of a ritual, a summoning, a dangerous game played with forces beyond human comprehension. The final message sent a chill down Detective Miller's spine. It was a photograph of a shadowy figure standing in the doorway of Sarah's apartment, its face obscured by darkness, but its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. The caption read, "Checkmate." Detective Miller, his heart pounding in his chest, realized with a sickening certainty that Sarah's disappearance was no ordinary case. She had stumbled into a world where the lines between reality and nightmare blurred, a world where the rules of logic no longer applied, and he was the only one who could bring her back. The unknown is a vast and often terrifying landscape. These stories, shared by those sworn to protect and serve, offer a glimpse into the shadows that lurk at the edge of our understanding. As we've journeyed through these chilling tales, we've confronted the unexplained, the unexplainable, the things that go bump in the night. But remember, these are not just stories. They are chilling reminders that the world is a stranger, more wondrous, and yes, more frightening place than we often care to admit. If you enjoyed these spine-chilling stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more terrifying tales. Stay safe and see you in the next video.